There are going to be spoilers for Hamilton the Musical on Broadway original cast, so if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, please leave. But if you want to stick around because you're broke, I totally 100% understand and will not judge you in the slightest. So Hamilton the Musical, guys. I guess this is a review. I'm not really sure what to call it. It's just like me raving about everything. I don't even know how to explain this to you guys. Like, I immediately after the show, I wanted to like get on my camera and tell everything about it. But like my mom was there and we were doing stage door and it was really late and so I didn't get the chance. So I like literally just so many notes, all the things. I'm actually gonna post this on Tumblr because I need it for future reference, but I'm gonna, you know, put a little read more if you don't really want to see it. However, lots of good things. I just want to remember everything, so I want to like share it with you. And also, I know a lot of people who are just not going to be able to see it. You may be curious. You may want to know, what did they do for a certain song? And I cannot answer all your questions because I cannot possibly remember everything about a 3-hour show. But if you have questions and you're like really curious about like a certain part or anything like that, like you are welcome to ask in the comments. I know there will probably be people who have seen the show who may watch this, so they could possibly answer them too if you're really curious, but this is Hamilton, and it's beautiful, and I give it an A+. It was just flawless, so good. So what were my favorite songs to start it off with? Like, it's so hard to pick because the album itself I really enjoy, and I love all the songs for very different reasons. In the musical, I think some of the like best moments for me, the Reynolds pamphlet. Oh my god, the Reynolds pamphlet. Also Hurricane. Hurricane was phenomenal. Like one of my favorites for sure. What else did I really like? I mean, Yorktown was fabulous. I also really liked Alexander Hamilton and My Shot. And at this point, I'm probably just gonna go ahead and name all of them because they were just all What I Miss. That one too, really good. But honestly, all of them were just so mind-blowing. They had such great choreography. The lighting really surprised me. Like, lighting is a huge part of this show, and it was so well done, and I really hope it gets an award because it's just, perfect. I would also like to point out, you think the singers on the album are great in the album, and then you hear them live, and like it's like angels singing, and it's so beautiful. It's different because they do change a little bit of it up and their voices are a little bit different live than on the album, but they're so beautiful. Like every time somebody had a solo, I was like, okay, Chris Jackson, you're my favorite. Philippa Sue, you're my favorite. Actually, Renee, like you're killing it right now. But like David, man. So like honestly, all of them impressed me so much, even though I knew what they were gonna sing. Like I had their notes memorized down to like almost every single note they sang, and yet they still surprised me. They still sounded fabulous. They still like wowed me with their voices, and it's just it's so like I can't even explain it. You would have to see it live to understand how amazing they all are, and you may or may not see them live, so I'm already sorry for you, but you should know they do really well live. Honestly, I would say they do it better live than they do on the album because it's just so much more raw and fabulous and beautiful. I did cry a couple of times. Some of them felt a little more forced than others. Like I did cry during It's Quiet Uptown, but that one I couldn't tell if I was like forcing too much or not. So there were a couple moments like that where it was like really like a sad song and I wanted to cry and I was crying, but like I don't know. It's hard for me to differentiate like, oh, I'm crying, I have so much emotion, and like, oh, I need to cry, let's cry. So that's hard to explain. But the one time that like I 100% know I was bawling and I had emotion and it was killer, literally when Leslie walked on stage for the first number. Like the first moment of the show, lights go down, everybody's talking, and then dun 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 do 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 do. And so Leslie comes out. If you've seen the Grammys performance, he's on stage right. I'm looking at it, it's to the left. I think that's stage right. We'll just say it is. So he's on stage right over here. And so I'm watching him. And the light comes from his back. And he's just like lit up on stage, but it's backlit. Literally, I was sitting there. I cannot control it. Like tears falling down. My mouth is just like, I'm sobbing, like bawling hardcore. It took me 2 seconds. And I'm bawling, and I'm standing there and I can't control it, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is Hamilton the Musical. And so my mom like comes over and hugs me because I don't really cry when I'm around her. And like she's just holding me, and I just like squeezed her hand so hard because I was like, this is it. Like, this is the moment that I'm gonna remember when I'm dying. Like, this sobbing moment is my life. And like finally after about a minute I was like, okay, Jenna, like pull it together, you can't cry, like you have makeup on, like you have to get through this, and people are probably gonna start looking at you soon because you're making loud noises, like deep breaths. And so I got myself together, but like that beginning literally killed me. Like I probably could have cried for a good 20 minutes at that point. So Alexander Hamilton was great. Obviously we saw it on the Grammys, so like the actual number itself, it was more just like, yeah, Hamilton, let's go. I like kind of knew the choreography a little bit, and so I watched a couple things that I was like, look, there's Hamilton walking in the background when he says, see if you can spot him, another immigrant coming out from the bottom. I was like, there goes Lin, bye Lin. And you know, then they did the, we fought with him, I died for him, I loved him, yeah. And you know, they get the spotlights, and they're up, and they're great, and they're beautiful. And like, and then it was over, and you're like, this is great, like keep it going, guys, let's go. And obviously it goes into Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr, like it's such a good song because there's so much good raps in that. And so the really, like, honestly, my favorite part in that song is when the trio comes out and they're doing their little, like, 3-person rap. And the thing that I didn't know was that they actually make the beats themselves with their cups. So there's a beat that happens, and it's like, I can't do, not a rapper, but I'm John Lawrence in the place to be, 2 pints of Sam Adams, but I'm working on 3. And so, like, they do the beat with their, like, tin cups. And so they like bang it, and it's like literally the only thing. There's no music, there's no anything. It's just them and their cups rapping. It was so good. Like Anthony Ramos, when he does the but I'm working on 3, it was like he was drunk, and it was so great and so well done. And then of course we have Lafayette, Daveed Diggs, who I love so much. Daveed is one of my favorites for sure. And so he does his like, oui, oui, mon ami, je m'appelle Lafayette. And he goes into it in his French accent. And then of course we have Hercules Mulligan, Oki, who killed it and who was great, and I saw him. And, you know, he does his horses rap, and everybody laughs, and it's great. And so finally, they're like rapping in this pub setting, and then finally, you know, Hamilton comes in, and he's like, if you stand for nothing, Burr, what do you fall for? And then you could tell everybody has this energy in the audience, and you're like, yeah, it's time for my shot, let's do this, you know? And so, you know, they go through my shot, and the choreography, I just remember seeing the choreography for that, and I was blown away by it. There's a scene that actually has a picture in the book, and it's like all over the place, where Hamilton is standing on a box, and everybody is around him in a circle doing stuff. And even though I can't describe the choreography because I already forgot it, like, that part is, like, very important. And I'm so glad the picture is in the book because it takes me back to that moment every time I see it. And obviously, Lin rapped the whole thing, and it was just amazing. Like, honestly, the thing that amazed me the most, they didn't necessarily always stay on beat with their raps. Like, there were a number of times where I felt like they were gonna miss their beat, and I was like, guys, hurry up, you're gonna miss it, you gotta go faster, or you gotta slow down, or yada yada. And I was just so anxious for everybody, but everybody made it, and everybody could like catch up or like slow down if they needed to, which is different than singing, because if you're singing and you sing it wrong, you're pretty much screwed. But with rapping, you can kind of like do what you want. And so even though some of the raps were a little bit rhythmically different than on the album, like they were all rapped well, and nobody made a mistake. Like, somebody made a mistake in Les Mis, which was interesting because I saw that show too, but nobody made a mistake in Hamilton. Everybody was on point, and I saw it, and I loved it, and it was great. But we're talking about my shot. So my shot is really good because at the end you have the part where everybody's like, whoa, 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 you know, and so Anthony Ramos comes out, and he's like, rise up, and, you know, he goes, everybody sing. And so literally, I'm pretty sure like the whole audience was singing along. I know me and Mom were. I couldn't really tell how many other people were, but in my head, everybody in the audience was singing along to that part, and it was just so like beautiful. Like, we're just singing along to this show that we all love, that is amazing, that is life-changing, and just, it's so beautiful. And I wish you could have been there with me because it was so amazing. And so of course we go, rise up, you know, and I'm forgetting a lot, I'm sorry, but finally it gets to the point where, you know, Hamilton does this, I am not throwing away my shot, and he's out in center stage with the other 3, and they like walk out and they do it, and then you're like, yeah, yes. And so then after that we go into the story of tonight, And that one was, you know, it's just like another great drinking song and everybody's singing and it's just like, yes, yes. I honestly, like, the staging is pretty basic. Like, the four of them are just out in their blue coats, like, drinking and singing. And it, you know, it was beautiful. It was great. And suddenly I can't remember what song comes next. And we've already been talking for like 1,000 years. The Schuyler sisters. The Schuyler sisters was amazing because of the sisters. Like, they're just so fantastic live. One of my favorite things is that Eliza keeps grabbing their hands and they'll like pull each other along and they're just like so cute, you know? They're just like girls who are in big dresses, dancing, singing. And Burr was really great. Leslie was a fab person in this show, by the way. And so when the girls come out and they do their whole like second verse where they're like, work, and it's great and it was really well done. They like keep swishing their skirts the whole time, and like I would love to see the choreographer work on that because it was just so beautiful to watch. And I seem to recall in that one there was a lot of circular movement with like the girls in the middle. That one, honestly, it was just another one where you're like, the greatest thing in the world, and you're just like trying not to cry because you're so emotional, excited. But like the choreography I feel like was, you know, like choreography. Like, I wasn't as impressed with that as I was with some of the other ones, but it was still like, you know, it's Hamilton, you gotta love it, it's beautiful. We have The Farmer Refuted. Now, the Farmer Refuted song was one that I never really latched onto at the beginning. I was like, okay, he's talking to Samuel Seabury, this is kind of annoying, go away. And then, you know, Christine got really into it and did a video about it, and so I kind of learned the rap a little bit more after that. But Farmer Refuted was such a fabulous, like, piece in the show because you have Thane Jasperson, who was on So You Think You Can Dance, by the way, if you didn't know. And so he's standing on this box, and it makes him look really short, and it's really funny. So he stands on this box, and he, like, brings out his scroll, and he's like, my name is Samuel Seabury, and you're like, your voice is funny. But he reads his thing, you know, and so then there's the part where, Hamilton and Hercules and Lafayette are all on the side, and this is going to be backwards for you, I'm sorry. Thane is like right here, you know, Samuel Seabury doing his thing. So Ham is sitting there, and so Oki leans over, Hercules Mulligan, and he's like, oh my god, tear this dude apart, and my mom's like, what did he say? And so I told her. And so then after that, you know, a little time passes, and he keeps talking, and then Burr comes over to Hamilton, and he's like, let him be. And so at that moment, David Diggs, they're the same person. Lafayette goes over to Hamilton, and he like shakes his head and he's like, no, like, don't do that. Don't agree with Burr because Burr's crazy. And so finally, Seabury, you know, finishes, and then Hamilton comes in. Yo, see how you all unravel at the sound of screams, but the revolution is coming. Okay, I'm sorry. So what happens is Hamilton ends up going up on the box with Seabury, and so they're like fighting to be in front. And so, you know, Hamilton's like rapping, and so Seabury like comes out in front of him, and he's trying to rap, and so they're like fighting to get to the front, and it's hilarious. And finally, you know, Hamilton wins, and he's saying all these things. Why should a tiny island across the sea? Anyways, so that was just so funny and so great. And so finally what happens at the end, we know what happens. A couple redcoats come out, and they're like, silence, a message from the king. And so we're all like, Rory O'Malley, what is he like? Literally, the dude sings exactly like Jonathan Groff as King George. It's really great because you can't really tell a difference. I listen so hard, and they are different because they're different people, but their like tone of voice and the way they portray George is very similar. Rory O'Malley, honestly, like, such a great guy. I'm so glad they chose him to replace Jonathan because he's King George, like, literally. This is something I forgot to tell you. So at the beginning of the show, usually what happens is there's either people in the audience, like workers, or there's like an loudspeaker person who is like, oh, like, turn off your cell phones and don't take pictures and be a good person. In this show, King George opens it, and so he's like, welcome to Hamilton, like, please turn off your cell phones, no photography, videography, whatever. And he's like, and enjoy my show. And he has his like nasally King George voice, and you're just like, okay, I'll enjoy your show, King George. All right. And it's really funny. Anyways, back to You'll Be Back. It was really great. The thing about King George is he doesn't do a lot in the show, and whenever he does, he just is very stand still. Like, he didn't have a lot of choreography throughout the whole thing. He's just kind of standing there. But he still managed to make the whole audience laugh, because he'll do like little gestures like dancing, or like, you know, he does some other things in some of his later songs that are really hilarious. And of course everybody gets a kick out of all of his really funny lines in this, like the last line. I suddenly can't remember it, but you know the last line. So he was just really great. I definitely highly praise Rory O'Malley because he is doing a fabulous job, even if you don't think so, he is. So after You'll Be Back, we go right into Right Hand Man, and I love Right Hand Man because of George Washington, aka Chris Jackson, aka Bay. He is so amazing. His vocal range and like his tonal qualities are so beautiful to me. And so obviously in this one we have Here Comes the General, and you know, and his right hand man, and it was just so powerful. Like, I seem to recall there was a lot of like, you know, soldier type choreography, but then, you know, George Washington comes out with his sword, and he starts in the back, and then he comes out and pulls out his sword, and he's like, I am a model of a modern major general, the venerated Virginian veteran whose men are all lining up to put me up on a pedestal, writing letters to relatives. Ooh, that line, everybody was like writing in a line. I remember that. So anyways, Right Hand Man was really good just because it introduces George Washington, and I love George Washington. And, you know, then when he kind of talks to Burr, you know, Washington has his desk and he's talking to him. And so then it's really funny because Hamilton comes in. And so at that point, you know, he's talking to Hamilton, and finally Burr is still over at Washington's desk, like playing around with things. And so finally there's like a little moment where they pause, and Washington's like, Burr, close the door on your way out. And so Burr's like, okay, and you know, awkward leave. But it was really great. I don't remember anything like very specific about it, but I just remember being like, here comes a general. Next it goes into A Winter's Bowl, and this is really, really funny because it has the line where it's like, we're reliable with the ladies, and everybody laughs and it's hilarious. But in that moment it's really funny because there's the four or five of them. I think it's like 3 or 4, but it's like Hamilton and one of the trio, or maybe 2 of the trio, and then Burr, and they're all in a line with their arms around each other. And so they start out the song and they're like doing some hip thrusts, and they're like, with the ladies, you know, hip thrusts. It's really funny. In the middle, so, you know, there's the line where it's like, is it a question of if Burr or which one? And so, you know, Hamilton and Burr are up in the front center stage, and they like look at each other and exchange that line. And so then it's them, and I can't remember who the other person is. It's another one of the trio, I think. And they get in their line again. And so they kind of like shimmy across the stage, the 3 of them, when they do their hey, 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 hey. And it was so beautiful. And then we're leading into Helpless, and I got Helpless. It was just, my favorite thing about Helpless, even though it is so centered on Eliza and it was beautiful, it has to simultaneously work for Helpless and Satisfied, and you don't realize how much work was probably put into that, because literally, so it follows Eliza obviously in Helpless the first time, but when they're setting it up, you know, you watch Angelica and she goes through some motions, and so she's moving around stage doing things, and I will come back to Helpless in a minute. But in Satisfied, it's literally same choreography. However, Angelica is talking and Eliza is silent, and it was just so cool to like watch Satisfied and be like, I remember this, I just watched this, Angelica was silent, but now she's talking, this is so great, you know? And Helpless was really great because there's like 2 parts that were my favorite. Like, my favorite part of Helpless, even though the whole song is beautiful and I love Philippa Sue, Hamilton's line in that song is so brilliant. The one where he's like, as long as I'm alive, I swear to God you'll never feel. And he has that tonal quality that's like, and I don't know, I find it really attractive when I'm listening to it, and I would love some guy to sing to me like that. And so in the show, he did it so well, and I was like, yes, go Lynn, go. There's the turntable. We will talk about the turntable more later, but what happens when it's like, there's so many things in my head right now. Well, I'll finish this thought and I'll go back to the next one. So there's this turntable, and there's the part where Eliza's dad is talking to Hamilton, you know, and so Eliza's talking about it. So the 3 sisters sit on a bench on the turntable, and the turntable is like turning while Hamilton is talking to Mr. Schuyler. And so what happens is they're sitting on the bench, the 3 sisters. Angelica has to lean forward, and like Eliza's over here, like looking at the audience over Angelica's back, and it was really cool. I don't know, I really liked that part of it. So anyways, we're going through this, and Hamilton, like, shakes hands with Schuyler, and Eliza's like, oh, I'm so helpless, and then, I can't remember exactly what part of the song it's at, but Hamilton has this part. I don't know if Lin always does it or if he just did it for us, but basically after he shakes hands and, like, agrees to it, he did this really hilarious hip thrust where he just, like, went for it. He's like, yeah, like, I got the girl, this is great, and, like, it was probably really sexist, but it was beautiful and great, and I thought it was hilarious. Back to the second verse, where Eliza's, like, talking about how they're writing letters to each other. 2 weeks later, I'm writing a letter nightly. And so at that part, it's so funny because Peggy doesn't do that much in the first act, Jasmine. And so Jasmine does this thing, and she does it in Satisfied too, because I was watching for it. In Helpless, during this, like, letter scene, she has all these letters in her hands, and she, like, does this weird thing where she's, like, shaking her arms, and she has this weird face, and she's like, look at me, like, I got all your letters, and it was really hilarious and funny. And she did it in both numbers, which I thought was great. Guys, there's so much to share and so little time to say it. So after that, you know, Helpless goes on. There's the wedding. Hercules Mulligan is the flower girl, which I assume you know. And Eliza puts on this beautiful veil, and that's, like, her wedding thing. You know, and then they kissed, and it was great, and then it was time for Satisfied. And Satisfied was always one of my favorite songs because it's a great song. It's one of the first songs I listened to on the album all the way through. And it's so interesting how they do it because, you know, she starts off with the toast, and then they literally, like, I don't even know how to explain it. I'm, like, remembering it right now when they do the rewind, because they actually, like, do the they use the rewind sample and stuff like that, so it sounds like it's being rewound and stuff. It sounds exactly like the track on the album. But Angelica's, like, in the middle of the stage, and the lighting is, like, pinkish purple, I think, and people, like, kind of walk backwards. And I don't know how to explain it because it kind of looks like it is being rewound and everybody's, like, going back to where they used to be. And then it just starts over from Helpless, and it's, like, the same choreography except Angelica's at the center and Angelica's the one singing. And it was so awesome, like, so incredible. Like, I don't even know how to explain all of the choreography because it was just so brilliant. And I love Satisfied as a song, so it was just amazing. Also, Renee's voice, oh my gosh, like, hearing her live and hitting those high notes, rapping it, doing it at speed was just like, beautiful angel. She's so amazing, and I'm so happy that I got to see her live because she's just so great. So after Satisfied, we go into the reprise of The Story of Tonight. And so it's just, like, the four of them being all drunk, and then Burr shows up, and then the three, it was really funny. Oh, the part where Hamilton's like, no, these guys should go, and they're like, what? No! It was really funny. And so then they leave, and of course we have Hamilton and Burr talking. And that leads us into Wait For It. I love Wait For It. Wait For It was my favorite song on the album when I first heard it. It's the reason I listened to Hamilton. I thought it was very interesting because it had some of the more subtle choreography. Like, I was expecting this big choreography because it's such a big song, you know, and there's these moments where it's like, love doesn't discriminate, you know, at the end where they have, like, the come in. But it felt very similar to the song, you know, the lyrics are like, wait for it, you know, I can't remember any lyrics right now, but, you know, wait for it, and you're just waiting for it. And most of the choreography, like, Burr didn't have any big moments where he broke out and did any dancing. He was just kind of, like, in the middle where everyone was around him, and it was very chill. And I was just, like, so interested to know why they decided to do such chill choreography. My only idea would be that because the song is called Wait For It, and so you're, like, waiting for this choreography and it never comes, which could say something about Burr's character. I'm not really sure. So I think even though, like, it was great, it sounded fantastic, I loved it, it probably was the biggest letdown, which sounds bad, but it was the one where I was, like, expecting a little bit more from it, and it didn't really have much of a dance thing going for it, so I was like, alright, not what I expected, but, you know, it was still great, and I still loved it. So then, Stay Alive. Stay Alive is a great song because there's a lot of, you know, guns and stuff like that. And anytime there was a gunshot or a bomb, like, the lights did this amazing thing where they were, like, underlit from under, like, kind of in the middle of the stage rather than coming from up top. It was, like, underneath, and it would light up yellow, and it was so good, So well done. So in this one, the part that was really hilarious is Charles Lee. I just love Charles Lee's voice, and he's just such a funny part, you know? And so I can still very easily remember, instead of me, he promotes Charles Lee, makes him second in command. I'm a general. Wah. And so Charles Lee is like up front on this side. And so Hamilton, I think he's like more on this side and then the center, and he's like, yeah, that's not the choice I would have gone with. He shoots a bat at the Battle of Monmouth. And so then, during the next part, there's a bunch of redcoats and there's red lighting on this side. And Charles Lee is kind of over here, and they're like, and Washington is up on the stairs, and he's like, everyone attack, retreat, attack, retreat. What are you doing, man? Get back on your feet. But there's so many of them, blah, blah, blah. You know the song. And so they're just kind of like moving this way across the stage. And finally, I'm pretty sure Lee must go up the stairs because he ends up all the way around up on top on this side. Later, when they're like, when he does his rap, he's like, Washington cannot be left alone to his devices, indecisive from crisis to crisis. You know, anyways. And so then, of course, after that, we go into the death, you know, of, well, not death, sorry, the shooting between Lawrence and Charles Lee. And so, again, it uses the turntable. The turntable was one of my favorite parts of the whole show. They used it so smartly and so well. It was, they had so many different uses for it, and it was so good. Every time they used it, I was just amazed. But they basically, 10 duel commandments. That's the next one. I'm slowly remembering all this, guys. So we did the 10 duel commandments. There was a bunch of ensemble members who did a lot of choreography for this one. But then it gets to the actual, you know, like shot between the two of them. And I can't remember if they do it in this one, but in most of the other shootings, there's an ensemble member who acts as the bullet. And so you have one person shooting, and then this ensemble member follows the bullet as it goes across the turntable. It was so amazing the way they did that. But that one I just remember, in this one, Charles's cloak was really big and blowy and cool. And then after that we have Meet Me Inside, and that one, the best part of that song, which I would agree in the album as well, is when, you know, Washington is yelling at Hamilton, and he says, son, I need you alive, and Hamilton's like, call me son one more time. And in the show, like, Lin, like, was into it, like, it was hardcore. You would be scared if you were Chris Jackson, but he went really hardcore and loud on that one. And then, you know, Jackson, because it's just the two of them on stage, and they're, like, fighting out in this corner, and so finally Washington's like, go home, Alexander. That's an order from your commander. And so then Eliza is out over on this side, and that goes into That Would Be Enough. And so the two of them are just singing on the bench, and it's beautiful and lovely, but, you know, it's just the two of them on the bench. One of my favorite numbers, absolutely, of the night. It was incredible. It starts out with Leslie Aaron Burr being up in the top part of the stage and up all the way up as close as he can in this corner. And so he does his little rap at the beginning, and when he does, everyone give it up for America's favorite fighting friend, he, like, gets up on, there's, like, a, you know, it's got bars, and so he, like, but it's wood, but, you know, he gets up on it, and his feet are up there. So he is as high as he can be on this stage, basically, and he's yelling, give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman. And Lafayette is on the table, and he does the jump. If you haven't heard of the jump is a big thing. Daveed Diggs is rapping this super fast, up a pitch. And he still raps as he jumps off this table, and he leaps into the air and falls down. I was, like, I was watching it, and I was like, this is history that I'm watching. This is life-changing right here. But it was so good because it's only, like, Washington and Daveed, and then there's a bunch of, like, ensemble members as soldiers being out there. But Lin isn't, like, Hamilton isn't on stage because he's not there yet. And so they're like, so you gotta get your right-hand man back. You know, you gotta put the button to the better to get your right-hand man back. And then we go into History Has Its Eyes on You. And Chris Jackson, guys, I love him so freaking much. So much. There's not a lot of choreography for that one. It's mostly just the singing. There are a lot of ensemble members that are involved in it because there's a lot of harmonies. But that was one of the moments where I realized how much different it sounds in a theater, because you can hear almost all of the individual harmonies, and you can hear, I don't know, you can just hear them and they're richer and fuller, whereas on the album they feel a little bit more flat, and you can't really differentiate. Like, I'm just listening for Chris Jackson, so I don't really hear anybody else. But, like, in the theater, you can hear all of the ensemble members and their different parts, and it was just like a choir of angels singing to me about history. And that has always been one of my favorite songs from the album, so it was just amazing to hear it live. And Chris Jackson, I will rave about him until I die, honestly. So then that takes us into Yorktown, and Yorktown is a really good one because it has a lot of fight choreography and the gunshots. And the gunshots with the lighting is just one of my favorite lighting techniques that they use throughout the whole show. And so the only part I can really remember, there's a lot of fighting that goes on, and then there's a guy in the top right corner who's waving the white flag on a parapet, you know. And so then the world turned upside down, and you know, the drinking song is happening, and George Washington smiles, and he's up here in the center stage on the upper level. And I think this is the one where they're all on individual boxes, them being like the four main guys, but I don't remember which part they're singing when they're on the boxes, but I'm pretty sure that's the one where they're all on the boxes. And I remember that moment being like, this is so great. And I think there's a picture in the Hamilton, so you can check that out. But it was just, I remember watching Yorktown, and I was like, remember this, Jenna, this is great, this is one of your favorites. So then we go into what comes next. And this is one of my favorite parts of the show, actually, because of the lighting. So when King George comes out, it's usually red as his light. But in this song, in this one, there's obviously the line where he's like, I'm so blue. And he kind of like pauses, and he has a cane, and he like jams the cane on the ground, and the lighting turns blue, and it was so well done. Brilliant. And so then that is also the one where he's like, he does his awesome wow in that one. And I was expecting the, you know, Jonathan Groff, where he's like, awesome, wow, you know, but Rory O'Malley, he was very subtle on his. He was like, awesome, wow, like, good job, you're great, you know. And it was really funny because it's totally different from the one I'm used to. So I was like, wow, all right, you put your own spin on it, Rory, good for you. And then we go into Dear Theodosia, which was beautiful, and the whole time I was just thinking about Lynn's son. Anyways, it's him and Burr who are sitting in chairs next to each other singing the whole song. And then here's the little nugget of information. I'm pretty sure it's right after this, and it's right before Nonstop. So Lynn Hamilton is sitting in his chair. Burr, either he's not in the spotlight anymore, or he's off stage. So Hamilton is sitting in his chair when Eliza comes in, and she's like, there's been a letter from you from Lawrence's father. And Hamilton's like, oh, don't read it. Like, I'm busy. Don't even worry about it. Like, whatever, it's fine. And then she's like, no, you should hear it. And he's like, all right, read it out loud. And Anthony Ramos comes on stage, and he's like here. So Hamilton's here. Anthony Ramos is like up here. This is at the very front corner of the stage. And so Eliza is reading this letter, and basically, I'm pretty sure it's intermingled of her reading, and then Lawrence does like a mini reprise of the story of tonight. And in that moment, everybody was just like, because the letter is telling Hamilton that Lawrence died after, like, the war is won, like, they are done fighting, but he still manages to get himself killed. And so, you know, Anthony Ramos does this beautiful, like, little reprise of the story of tonight. And so then Ham, like, the letter finishes, and Ham gets up, and he's like, I'm busy, like, I have some stuff I gotta go do. And so you're like, Hamilton. And then Burr comes out, and he's like, after the war, I went back to New York. And then we go into Nonstop, and Nonstop was literally so fantastic. It was one of the best ones for sure. The choreography was so good because the turntable was used a lot. There's obviously the beginning part where they're doing like the trial, and so Hamilton is talking, and Burr is like, our client Levery reaches innocent, call your first witness. That's all you had to say. And then Hamilton's sitting in this chair, and he's like, okay, one more thing, and he stands up, and then Burr starts singing, and it's really well done. And so then, after that, it goes into the next part where he's at the Constitutional Convention, and so they rearrange the chairs, so there's a bunch of chairs lined up down here, and then there's a big desk, and Hamilton gets on the desk, of course, and he's like, I practiced the law, practically perfected it. And in this version, like this show that he did, Lynn actually did like a stanky leg type of thing where he like, I practically perfected it. You can't see my leg, but it's doing like the swirling, stinky leg motion. And that was really great, and I love that part. And then, and that's also the same time where he's like, he talks for 6 hours, the convention is listless. And then there's two guys who are like outside of the chair area, and they're like, bright young man, yo, who the F is this? And you're like, yeah, that was a great part. And, then there's the part where Washington is like, I know it's a lot to ask. Sir, you want me to run the Treasury or State Department? treasury. And so Washington is up in the corner on the upper stage. Hamilton is in the middle of the regular stage. And so he says, you know, treasury. Lin's face, like, it was so expressive that I could see it up in the mezzanine that he does this big smile and he's like, let's go. And it was so funny. And then on the opposite side of Washington, on the upper level, is Eliza. And so Eliza's like, Alexander. He's like, I have to leave. Alexander. And it's just so emotional. And so she's singing and she's like, look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now. Helpless. And then Angelica, it kind of comes down the stairs on the back upper level and she does her like satisfied thing. He will never be satisfied. You know, and then it goes into everybody singing. And after that, literally just like, Angelica and Eliza unite in the center of the downstage, and there's this big piece of the stage that comes out that you didn't see before that's like a ladder, and it's like this big chunky thing. And so the ladder is now in center stage, and Hamilton, to end the song basically, he leaves Angelica and Eliza down on stage and he runs up because Washington is up at the top of the stairs, and he goes up, and that's when it ends, where it's like, I am not throwing away my shot. Lights go down, everyone cheers, intermission. It was great. So now we're done with Act 1. Don't you love me? I'm so exhausted. That was so much work. But I need to remember this and you need to remember it. So we're going to talk about Act 2 now. So stay tuned.